Good evening and welcome to the September 14th, 2017 meeting of the Kern County Planning Commission, which I will call to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll?
Mr. Louie?
Here.
Mr. Babcock?
Here.
Ms. Garcia? Ms. Poole? Mr. Sprague?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Obiot? Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Simon?
Here.
Thank you. Next order of business is item B, Commissioner member announcement or reports. Do we have any tonight?
Nope.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
have one very quickly, if you
Okay.
want to indulge me.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
I know that your commission has interacted with before, and Ms. Simon has brought cases before you, but I would like to take this opportunity to note that this is the first time she is coming to your commission as a division chief. We've had some turnover in our department. I have since then moved over to the division chief for operations, and Ms. Simon has been promoted and is now the division chief over the advanced planning unit. So this is her first meeting attending tonight as a division chief before your commission. So I just wanted to make sure that your commission was aware of that change.
Well, she's got some big shoes to fill with, but
Good
we
evening,
welcome
Ms.
you. So thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Simon.
Congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
Item C, approval of the August 24th, 2017 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no additions or corrections, I would move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Item D, cases withdrawn or requests for continuances. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, we have one item under D. That is conditional use permit number 45, map 143. The applicant is Mary Aguirre. The staff recommendation is to refer that project back to staff.
Thank you.
Motion to refer back to staff, item number 3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. As soon as we can cast votes, cast your votes.
Three ayes, two absent.
Thank you. This takes us to item E, which is the consent calendar for this evening. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The consent calendar includes items which are scheduled before your commission, which are being recommended for approval by staff, and the applicant has been informed of any special conditions and has no objection. The hearing on these items may be expedited if no member of the commission or audience wishes to comment or ask any questions on the case. This evening, we have two cases on the consent calendar. The first is case number 2. This is conditional use permit number 55, map 100. The applicant is Ishmael Valdovinos. The project is located on the west side of Noble Street, approximately 1/2 mile north of Highway 58 in the Bakersfield area. The request is to allow a manufactured home that does not meet the age requirements in a PL RS MH district. The staff recommendation is to approve the conditional use permit in accordance with the recommended conditions and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. The second item on consent this evening is case number 4. This is tract 6201, extension of time. The applicant is Frontier Homes by Cornerstone Engineering. The project is located on the southeast corner of 30th Street West and Orange Street in the Rosamond area. The request is an extension of time for a period of 3 years for vesting tentative tract map number 6201, which proposed to divide a 20-acre area into 75 single-family residential lots and a sump lot. That project included 3 limited design variations and a development variation that would allow the reduction of the required 660-foot separation of the street intersection on a major highway. The staff recommendation is to approve the 3-year extension of time from November 5th, 2017 to November 5th, 2020, subject to the original conditions of approval, with the inclusion of an additional condition requiring the payment of traffic impact fees in effect at the time building permits are applied for on any lot within the recorded map or phase, and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. That completes the reading of the consent calendar tonight.
Thank you. For those of you in the audience, you've heard the reading of the consent calendar. If you have any questions on item 2 or 4 or concerns, please raise your hand and let me know. And we will pull that from the consent calendar and hear that item in its regular order. Seeing none, do any commissioners want to pull an item?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no comments regarding items 2 and 4. I would make a motion to approve items 2 and 4 as read into the record by staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
3 ayes, 2 absent, motion carries.
Thank you. Could we have the notice of right to appeal, please?
You can, Mr. Chairman. For projects where the Planning Commission action is final, those actions are subject to appeal to the Board of Supervisors by any interested person, and no development proposed by any application may be authorized until after the date of final appeal. An appeal may be filed with the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department at our offices located at 2700 M Street, Suite 100 in Bakersfield, with a filing fee on $540. Those forms are available at the Planning Department. The filing must be made within 14 days of and including the date of the hearing. For tract maps, an appeal must be filed within 10 days from the date of decision of the Planning Commission. Any such appeal must also be accompanied by an appeal fee of $540. If no appeal is received, the action of the Planning Commission is final.
Thank you. This takes us to item F, which is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address this commission on any matter that is not on tonight's agenda, but over which we have jurisdiction on. Would anyone like to take advantage of that this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to item G, which is our public hearing portion to this evening. And that would be new cases, be number 1. And who is handling that?
That would actually be me,
All right.
Chairman. All right, well, case number 1, this is conditional use permit, case number 9, map 167-4. The request is a conditional use permit that would allow a dog kennel in an E 2 1/2 RS MH district. Our applicant this evening is Ms. Jennifer Arn. The project site consists of approximately 5-acre parcel, which is located at 24275 Equestrian Drive in the Sand Canyon area. The project site has a general plan map code designation of 5.6 and is located within the Sand Canyon specific plan area. Additionally, the site is zoned E 2 1/2 RS MH. The site itself is currently developed with a manufactured home, a commercial coach, several accessory structures, and then a dog kennel facility. Parcels surrounding the property are of 2.5 to 5 acres in size. They are developed with single-family development residences and accessory structures that are located throughout the area. Some of the adjacent properties are also vacant. The closest residential dwellings are approximately 300 feet to the northwest and 400 feet to the southeast of the project site. All access is provided off Equestrian Drive. So again, the project this evening is request and approval of a conditional use permit that will allow the retention of a dog kennel facility for golden retriever dogs. Your commission should be advised that a request was similar to this was in front of your commission 6 years ago. Conditional use permit number 8, map 167-4 was approved in 2010 and authorized a dog kennel with up to 75 dogs for a period of 6 years. That conditional use permit expired on December 24th, 2015. The project before you this evening, again, would allow the continued operation of the kennel of purebred golden retrievers. The request, as identified, is for a total of 75 dogs again. Your commission should be advised that there are no contracted employees that work on the site. Any daily care or maintenance of the facility is done by the project proponent and volunteers that assist her. The site itself is not generally open to the public, but you are allowed to make appointments to come and view the dogs. Visitors can be accommodated by this appointment, and generally, at the most, you would have about 4 visitors per week, and that would be on a fairly good week according to the project proponent. Animals are fed and watered twice daily, and fly traps are used on the facility to keep the flies down. A site inspection was done by Planning and Natural Resources Department staff on May 17, 2017, in which we noticed that there were approximately 40 dogs on the subject property at that time of the site visit. This project does have a site history, the site does have a history that I would like to just make your commission aware of. In 2009, a violation was held to determine and consider whether or not a kennel had been established on the site without the proper land use approvals. It was the determination during that initial violation hearing that a kennel had been established that required a conditional use permit. Therefore, at the beginning of 2010, the project applicant process through the county, a conditional use permit request. And again, your commission approved conditional use permit 8, map 167-4, for a temporary period of 6 years that allowed a kennel to be established that would allow the maintaining of 75 dogs. Subsequent to that, in the end of 2015, the permit expired. In March of 2016, staff did receive a revised application to reestablish the kennel facility. And then in May of 2017, we did conduct a subsequent violation hearing to determine whether or not the kennel had been operating without the approval of land use, in which case the determination was that it had, and any retention of the facility required to go through a conditional use permit, which brings us to the action we have tonight. As part of our compliance review and in considering the applicant's request, staff has conducted a review of both the existing operations. We've done any record search to determine what we've been notified or has been advertised or noticed on the site. We consulted with the Kern County Animal Services Department, and we did conduct the in-site inspection. I would note for your commission that as part of this review, staff did identify that a few conditions that were previously approved in the 2010 approval had not been fully met, or there were still a few issues, which I have outlined on page 3 of your staff report. Primarily, the only building permits that we could find that had been issued on the site were for the single-family residence and a water well. So those accessory structures that are used as part of the kennel do require building permits, which have not been obtained. The other violation that staff identified is that the project proponent is required to provide current vaccine records and other information on the dogs upon request by Animal Services. And according to the most recent inspections from Animal Services, those records had not been able to be provided when they had been requested. As part of our overall review, again, the Planning and Natural Resources Department staff consulted with Kern County Animal Services. Animal Services has expressed their concern to us of this particular project site and the project operations ability to maintain 75 dogs at their request. Attached to the staff report that you received tonight was the most recent report prepared by Animal Services based on an inspection they conducted in July, in which they identified some concerns that they noticed. Again, beginning on page 3, staff has outlined some of those concerns. Based on the most recent site inspection from Animal Services, the Animal Services officer identified that multiple dogs had ticks and that there was a smell of urine on saturated ground. It was identified that the project applicant was not able to provide the current vaccine records. There was a concern that their applicant could not provide an evacuation policy when requested. There was no specific building area that had been designated for female dogs that were giving birth, nor was there an identified quarantine area for any dogs that were sick and needed to be quarantined from the other animals. The Animal Services officer could not find any signage that identified the project proponent's contact information related to the operation. And the overall determination was that the site had been substandard and not in compliance with any animal service permits or requirements. Staff has notified property owners within 1,000 feet of the project before you this evening. We have received 4 comment letters. The first, or the report, we provided from Animal Services Department. We also received correspondence from our applicant, Ms. Arn. She provided a response and a rebuttal to some of the concerns that were raised by the Animal Services Department during their most recent site inspection. We received correspondence from the applicant's attorney, Mr. Zellner, where he indicated that our project proponent is not a commercial breeder, and at the very best, she is a hobby breeder. And finally, staff did receive we received a no comment from the Kern County Public Works Department, and received 1 comment in opposition from a Sand Canyon resident, indicating they did not want any other dog kennels in the Sand Canyon area. I would note on page 5 that staff has provided for your commission's review the definition of a dog kennel. According to the zoning ordinance, there is no distinction between a commercial dog breeder and a hobby breeder. According to the definition, a kennel in the Kern County zoning ordinance premises wherein any person engages in the business of boarding, breeding, buying, letting for hire, training for a fee, or selling dogs, cats, except for a facility operated by a humane society or a governmental agency, or its authorized agents if the purpose, for the purpose of impounding and caring for animals. So just to make sure that your commission is aware, any activities, including breeding, regardless of how many, how often, is considered a kennel for purposes of the zoning ordinance. So regardless the size and total number of dogs that are being bred, it does require a conditional use permit and is classified as a kennel for purposes of land use approval. Again, on page 5, staff is beginning to outline the 5 conditions that are necessary for your commission to approve a conditional use permit. Upon review of the project, staff does believe that the first 4 conditions can be satisfied by the project proponent. The condition in question tonight, and really the item before your commission, relates to the 5th finding. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the public or the property and residents in the vicinity. So again, while staff believes there's sufficient justification for items 1 through 5, there is a question as to, 1 through 4, there is a question as to the 5th finding. I would note that public health and safety in this particular case applies not only to the project site, the surrounding property owners, but in this case, the dogs that are on the site themselves. So through our consultation and our ongoing discussions with the Animal Services Department, it was the determination and recommendation by staff that this project proponent can obtain the necessary building permits, obtain the necessary planning permits with your approval this evening, and Animal Services believe that this applicant can get the necessary permits needed by Animal Services. However, there is a concern regarding the total number of dogs that they believe this operator can manage, given the current operations, given the fact that it's run on a volunteer basis, given the history of noncompliance with some of the land use requirements and the necessary to obtain the permits from Animal Services. So what we have done, beginning on page 6, is staff has outlined a series of conditions that we would propose to include for your commission's consideration this evening that would allow authorization of the kennel to move forward and continue. However, staff is recommending a reduction in the number of adult dogs that could be maintained on site. So the first condition, and I kind of want to just outline some of these conditions so that your commission has an understanding. Staff is recommending approval. However, we are recommending conditions that would limit the total number of adult dogs associated with the kennel facilities to 6. That's beginning outlined in condition 2 of your project site. Condition 2 of your staff report. Within that condition, again, the applicant has indicated, and we have believed that there's approximately 40 to 48 dogs on site now. That condition includes provisions that gives the project proponent 4 months to work at reducing the number of dogs she has to the identified 6. Within that provision, staff has also included provisions that specify that with written authorization from the Director of Kern County Animal Services, an additional 6 months can be added to reduce the number of dogs from approximately 48 down to 6. The reason staff broke that up is because there are permits that need to be obtained. It was our belief that by initiating a 4-month process would give the applicant appropriate time to obtain the building permits necessary, to obtain the animal services permits necessary, and to show good faith effort at reducing the total number of dogs. The thought being that if good progress has been made in those first 4 months, determined by the Director of Animal Services, an additional 6 months can be identified to where ultimately, within a 10-month period, the project proponent would only have 6 adult dogs on site. This condition further specifies that it is the project proponent's job to manage any breeding to ensure that at any given point in time, there are only 6 adult dogs on site. Staff considers any dog that is over 4 months old to be an adult. So the provision specifies that through the operations, the project proponent needs to ensure that if a litter is born, that those dogs have been moved off-site to the appropriate locations before they become older than 4 months old. I would also note condition 5C that staff is proposing. requires that the project proponent obtain all necessary permits issued by Animal Services and comply with the following provisions. Those provisions specify that they maintain on site any records regarding the animals, that an evacuation plan be prepared, that separate birthing and quarantine areas be identified on the project site, and that appropriate signage be included. I would note for your commission too, and for the applicant's benefit, the item before you tonight is a land use permit, the ability to operate a kennel, basically. There are permits that are not before your commission in which the applicant has to obtain from Animal Services Department. So just as a reminder, the specific item this evening is any permits associated with land use approval, and then it is upon, if it should be approved by your commission, it will be the requirement of the project applicant to then work with the Animal Services Department and obtain any necessary permits that Animal Services requires to operate a kennel as well. Condition 6A, staff has identified a requirement that there be a combined 1,000 square feet of shade structures to ensure that each dog has access to appropriate shelter. We have also, because there was a question that we had identified and noted in some of the reports that were provided, we would note that the project proponent's existing residential mobile home can be utilized to meet these requirements, provided that it is maintained in a manner sufficient to the overall health and safety of the dogs as determined by Kern County Animal Services. Again, staff does include additional conditions specifically to address concerns raised by Animal Services as part of their report. Additionally, staff is recommending that this conditional use permit be granted for a period of 2 years. This would allow the project proponent to not only get in compliance, but then over that 2-year period, maintain the appropriate compliance permits, and then at that time, should it be her desire to request an extension, we could always process a conditional use permit in the future, at which point she would be authorized to request more than 6 adult dogs. So with that, staff does believe that compliance with the above listed conditions, as well as the other conditions that have been attached to the staff report, will ensure that the proposed project will not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the public or the property of the residents in the vicinity, including those of the dogs that are maintained on site. Therefore, staff concludes, and our recommendation is that we recommend that your commission approve the conditional use permit, subject to the conditions, for a temporary period of 2 years, and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. That completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions your commission has related to
Thank
the
you, Mr.
conditions or
Murphy.
anything else.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Mr. Murphy, the 6 count that we're looking at here tonight does not include personal dogs, right?
Commissioner Sprague, through the chair, that is correct. It does not.
So
These 6 dogs specifically apply to those dogs associated with the kennel operations.
On a commercial basis?
Yep, and so any breeding, those are actions associated with the kennel, and so any of that type of activity, those dogs would be limited for that, but it does not include personal dogs.
I have one more question. Has staff taken a look at a prior situation in Los Angeles County where the applicant was cited and convicted of mistreatment? I think it says this when I read it on the web, and not having a clean facility, and then I guess moved to Kern County and did the same thing here, and that the conditional use permit that we approved in 2010 expired in 2016. I think it was December. And so she's operated a kennel without having a conditional use permit until she was cited by Kern County Animal Services. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
And at that point in
Or,
time,
Mr.
that triggered the request tonight for conditional permit to be approved for the 75 dogs.
Yes,
And-
that is correct.
And they found various degrees of violations, and the planning department, I guess, investigated and found that there were no building permits for the structures, and other facilities in there were not appropriate for the health, safety, and welfare of the dogs. So during this period, a temporary period, if we considered that tonight, how does she have to come in and make applications for permits on structures and things that are there already? or have to be built in accordance with what the requirements of animal control?
Commissioner Sprague through the chair. So to kind of help explain this, let's just start with the more recent violation hearing that was conducted. Citation, it was identified, a concern was brought up, and it was looked at that the operation was being operated without a kennel or without land use authority. So how that works is then to verify that, staff notifies the project proponent, and at our director's hearing, we conduct a violation hearing. At this violation hearing, it's an opportunity for the project applicant or the project owner, surrounding property owners, anybody else to provide the hearing officer any information specifically to help the hearing officer determine whether or not a land use violation is in fact occurring. During that process, in which the applicant was able to provide pictures or any testimony that she wanted, it was the determination of a hearing officer that the facility had been operating without appropriate land use approval. What we have done then, and as part of that decision, the hearing officer has a couple different choices. The hearing officer can say, there is a violation. All operations must cease immediately because they are contributing to public health and safety concerns, at which point the applicant needs to stop all activities, remove everything from the site, abate the violation. Another option available to the hearing officer, should the evidence, and I don't want to say evidence, but should the information in the record indicate that continued use of the operation will not create a public health and safety, the hearing officer may allow the project site to continue operating under stipulations. That's what happened in this particular case. And so the hearing officer, one of the stipulations they indicated as part of this process was, you have structures on your property that do not have building permits. You need to obtain those building permits if your project is approved. One of the stipulations before we would ever come forward to your commission is a requirement that the project applicant consult with the Public Works Department so that they can review the property and get an estimate in terms of what the cost to obtain the specific permits that are on that facility. They then have to provide us written acknowledgement that they have contacted and that they are willing to obtain the appropriate building permits should your commission approve the project. So in this particular case, the applicant is fully aware of what structures do not have the permits, what structures need to have building permits should your commission approve the project, and they have an estimate in terms of what the cost would be to obtain those permits. We have signed acknowledgement that does understood, and that should the project be approved, she would go about and obtaining those permits. Additionally, similar to a project, maybe a development project that would get land use authority through the county, but then also has air permits they have to get that they get through San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. It's a similar process in terms of animal services. If she gets land use authority tonight, based on whatever recommendation is from your commission, the project applicant still does have to obtain the appropriate permits that are issued from Kern County Animal Services Department. And she would go through that process after this process, should a use be approved.
Mr. Murphy, does public health, Kern County Public Health, enter into the picture, or is it totally under the control of Animal Services?
Commissioner Sprague, I'm not 100% sure whether or not they enter the picture in that aspect. I do know that from our land use authority aspect, they were notified of the project and they were aware of it. Whether or not they have and what role they play in the issuance of any permits issued by Animal Services Department, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Louie, you had some questions?
I did. Mr. Murphy, how did staff determine that the maximum number of dogs should be 6?
Well, we looked at a couple different things. So, as I had mentioned, we do not have a distinction in our zoning ordinance related to a hobby breeder or anything along those lines. But the project applicant's attorney indicated that she's more of a hobby breeder, according to the American Kennel Club guidelines. So I looked at those guidelines. We evaluated what those guidelines say. Generally speaking, according to some of the paperwork and what I was able to find, a commercial breeder, just give or take, again, it's not official from our zoning ordinance, but people generally think a commercial breeder is anybody that has 20 dogs or more, whereas someone that is a hobby breeder, it identified 4. There could be more, that's not a hard number, but given that range, given the project's history, given the existing operations, the fact that there are no employees on site, staff consulted with Animal Services and tried to come up with a number that we believed is appropriate for the existing site with the existing operational statements that we have been provided, and that is where we came up with the number of 6.
You know, I looked at the animal services report, and the supplemental report indicates that on March 18th, 2016, someone from animal services went out and the facility was clean and the dogs appeared healthy. On January 12th, 2017, someone from that department went out and noted everything appeared to be healthy and clean during my inspection. And then again, it looks like 5 months ago in April of this year, someone from the animal services department went out and again stated the animals appeared to be clean and healthy. So do we know how many animals were out there during that period of time?
Commissioner Leary, through the chair, specifically on each day they went out, I do not know. I can only know that the information that was provided to me indicated there were approximately 48 at the last site inspection. What I can tell you is I did have a conversation specifically with Director Cullen of Animal Services Department, because there are varying degree of information contained in the reports about the health of the dogs. The most recent report made a recommendation from the officer that all operations should cease specifically. In my conversation with the director, I asked, is that really the case we're at? Is that how we believe the necessary steps from your department need to take? And his response was, no, we're concerned with the overall number of dogs. They're very concerned that the project applicant is not complying with animal services permits that need to be issued. However, he did believe that there is a possibility that this operator could operate an appropriate kennel and obtain the appropriate building permits, and then for his department, the appropriate animal services permits, should the number be reduced to a more manageable level.
Okay.
And so that is kind of where we came to, and that is kind of, while you have different varying degrees of information in the reports, but my conversation with the Director of Animal Services.
And is that why in the recommendation for number 3, staff is recommending no more than 48 adult dogs shall be on site and then reduce it from there? You set it at 48 because you guys believe that at the last inspection there were about 48.
That is correct. There was different numbers of dogs. So really what that condition, what it's meaning and what it is attempting to do is say, hey, should your commission approve the project tonight, the project proponent needs to cease obtaining additional dogs. I mean, we would like that. There should never be any more than 48, and over the next 4 months and then potentially a 6-month extension, reduce the number of dogs down to the required 6.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. Is what you are saying is that when you spoke to the Animal Services Department, they said that their concern when they said that facility should be shut down immediately, their main concern was with the permitting process, right? Them not having the right permits from the Animal Services Department. Was that the main focus? And then they said, well, in addition, we think that this can be a good facility if we reduce the number of dogs down.
Commissioner Lee, through the chair, not speaking for the director, it was my understanding that this particular site had a history of not complying with animal service permits. And then
okay.
The most recent site inspection, the officer noticed that the dogs did not appear to be healthy or in as good a shape as they would like. So I think the combination of the two, I can't specify whether or not one was more or the other. I can just know that they are concerned that they have repeatedly tried to make sure that the animal services permits are applied for, obtained, and complied with. And they have been having difficulty doing that over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Is the applicant in the chambers this evening? Okay. How many people wish to speak either for or against this application? Could you give me a show of hands? Okay. Here's how this works. I'll take an opening statement from the applicant, and then we will hear from any people in the audience that's opposed to this application, and then we'll take testimony for people that are in favor of the application, and then we will have a closing statement if the applicant wishes to do so. And then from there, we'll close the public hearing, and the commissioners will have comment and take action. So with that, I invite the applicant to come forward. Please, everyone that comes to the podium, state your name for the record and spell your last name.
My name is Susan Jennifer Arn. I go by Jennifer. And A-R-N is my last name.
Okay, do you have statements you'd like to make to the commission?
Yeah, a lot. I guess I'm going to have to start at the beginning because of what was just said. I never
A 3-minute timer, please.
not or refused to
3
get
minutes.
the building permits and that kind of a thing, but I didn't know about them. I had an attorney that was doing this for me, and, you know, she didn't let me know, and, you know, that's part my fault. I didn't, you know, read it, but I was so upset at the time, I just had her handle it, and she said when it was over that everything is fine, you've got your permit, and that's it. So I didn't purposely not get building permits. If I knew they were there, I would have had them right away. We do have waiting to start the building permits, and we have a crew that's going to come in and do the repairs. They're going to do it, you know, for helping me, you know. And a lot of the things she said are just not true. And I know I've supplied a bunch of the stuff, and I don't know if you have read everything, you know, my replies to everything, which is the truth. And I don't know why they're not saying, you know, that that's the truth. I do have things to submit now, and I know you got the first ones of the people that are writing in. Did you see those that they sent in? Yeah.
Yes.
And I have more that came in late, and I would like to submit them.
You can bring them up to the clerk.
Me or her?
Well, between the two of you,
Oh, okay.
get them to her. Thank you.
And let's see, where do I go from there? I did, for 2 years, try to get through to the planning department to find out what is the exact date to renew my permits, my CUP, because I had so much paperwork, we were going through it, and we found 3 different dates. We didn't know which dates it was, but every time I would call, they would say, well, we can't handle that, you have to talk to so-and-so. They would switch me, they would put me on hold, nobody would answer, I left messages, nobody called back, and finally, in, I think it was the first week of January, I called, and Patricia Thompson answered the phone, and she said, well, let me look this up for you, and we'll see what's going on. And this is the first time anyone has ever been nice to me and talked to me and is trying to help. So she came back with me and said that your permit expired 2 weeks ago and that they should just renew it. And then when she came back, she said, no, they won't renew it. You have to start all over again, which I did. And then, you know, I have all this paperwork here which shows, you know, that kind of thing. And it shows that I was sent to 4 different people, you know, to start the permit again, then they changed it to somebody else, and they changed it to somebody else, and they said I had to start again, which finally didn't happen. They left it at the fact that I did already apply, and I paid the fee. And, you know, down the road, when we finally got to that point, I sent the fee. I have copies of the money order I sent. I have return receipts, certified return receipts, that it was mailed, and all my stuff that was mailed, I have that in here. And I don't know if you received that, so I brought it again. If you have seen it, okay, but it's in here. I brought things you probably don't know about. I got a statement of operation from 2009, which I corrected for 2017. Comments from 2009, which are corrected for 2017. I showed, well, I have all kinds of things here that are important. And I do have a vet paper, a paper of who my vets are and how to get a hold of them, rabies vaccination licenses, you know, all of this pertaining to the dogs, showing what OFA breakdown. And I have all my information here, which when the pound was there, they never asked, they would ask me if I have something, and I would say yes, they didn't ask to see it. And she said, okay, you know, and this went on for everything. It was just, she never asked to see anything, because I have everything, it's right here. And I can submit this, but you can't keep it, because it's my records. So if you want to look at it, you're welcome.
Anything you submit stays with the county.
Well, can I show it to you? I mean, here's all the records for all the dogs, and it has everything that was required there. Canine, golden retriever, female, date of birth, avid chip number, owner, transferred from somebody, from breeder
Okay.
at a date, or, you know, it's mine, you know, that was never transferred, it was born there. Has a rabies vaccination dates, which is also on the rabies thing. The DHL PPC, the frontline for ticks, any tick medications that were given the last few months, because once it's given, it's, you know, it's obsolete, so we just put the most recent.
Okay.
Every year, we give tick medication, because we're in the mountains, we do have ticks. But we haven't had, they're not infested, they're not, like last year, we had less than this year, but one year we had none. One year we had a whole lot, but that was 5 or 6, 7 years ago. So we never know what we're going to get, we just have to treat them as we get them. And all my dogs are taken care of, and I'm not the only one there working there. There is a guy that lives there that also helps me out, so there's 2 people taking care of these dogs. And there's never been 75 dogs on the property for probably 8 years. I mean, I immediately reduced the amount, because I was going to reduce it anyway. And I was hoping to be able to move then, but with the economy, it just didn't happen.
Okay.
So, you know,
Can
I'm
you
trying,
wind up your comments, ma'am?
well, let's see. I will submit all these. I'm not, most breeders are breeding for money. They don't care about the dogs or what they breed, the type they breed. All my dogs have their hips, hearts, elbows, and we've got a ton of OFA excellent dogs, which takes years of breeding, you know, to do your breeding and get that, you know, for the dogs. And so I have a list here of that, And 6 dogs is unreasonable. I have, you know, less now, and more are going to be going, but the way I breed is that I breed a good breeding. I take 1 or 2 and keep it to a certain amount of time till I can evaluate it, get the clearances to make sure the dog is healthy, and then if it's good enough, I will keep one of them or whatever, and then the other ones would go to be sold or to given away or to go to rescue to get a good home or whatever. And even with the dogs I have now, it takes an hour and a half to feed them all. I mean, it's nothing. It's not like I need a whole troop of people in there taking care of them.
I just
know.
have one question for you, ma'am.
Yes.
You consider yourself a hobby breeder,
Yeah.
not a commercial kennel. Why do you need so many dogs? Just for,
Because I'm breeding to make better dogs. And in order to do that, you have to raise your puppies, and then you have to evaluate them and see what the best of the best, and then you get rid of the
I'm
excess.
very familiar with the process. I had a
I've been
kennel at
doing it-
one time.
Oh, you have?
Yes,
What kind of dogs?
it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
But, and I didn't need 48 dogs to evaluate health. I bred for health and temperament as well.
Well,
So-
we can do prelims at 1.5 years and OSA at 2.
Well, I'm sorry, I disagree with you. Maybe we can come to some other
don't-
number tonight, but.
Yeah. I don't need 48.
I disagree with your statements personally. I don't know what my colleagues feel, but I'm sure they'll ring in at their, when they want to. In fact, one just has. But Mr. Louie, go ahead.
Sure. Ms. Arn, you just
Yeah.
mentioned that you don't need 48. How many do you need?
To continue with what I'm doing and what I've done my whole life, I would say it's reasonable for 20 or 25. And I'm in the process of cutting down now, but I have to get my clearances first.
So you would be okay with 22, 25?
Yeah, 25 would be good, and then I'll probably take it down myself to 20.
How many dogs have you had on your property or at your facility over the last 18 months on average?
18 months?
Does it fluctuate? Is there a
Yeah,
wide
it fluctuates
fluctuation?
all the time, yeah.
So give me a range. Where are you at usually? Over the
Usually
last
it's,
2 years?
usually it's been around 40. But most of them are young, they can't be bred, they're too young. They don't have their clearances yet, and what happens if I don't have the dogs I've worked for my whole life to produce, then what if one of these supposedly 6 dogs, I only breed my dogs once or twice, because this isn't a puppy mill or anything. When they leave, then what, I have to go out and buy a new one? I can't use my own breeding that I've worked for 50 years? With OFA Excellent, I just can't go buy another dog that's OFA Excellent. They're not selling them, they're keeping them for breeding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh,
I have,
Mr. Sprague.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, are you still a member of the American Kennel Club?
Yes,
And so when you sell these dogs, you issue a certificate from them that's, or from you that says that they're certified by
Yeah.
American Kennel Club?
yeah. Yeah.
Some of the information I read on the web today said that you were not a member anymore of American Kennel Club.
What? No, yeah, I am, in good standing. I had an inspection. I submitted the papers, the last inspection of AKC, and everything was fine on the property.
Okay.
How long ago was that?
Pardon?
How long ago was that, ma'am?
2014. They haven't come back around because I haven't been breeding any dogs now.
You haven't bred since 2014?
No, 2015.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I have for right now.
Do you want to submit that paperwork?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
There's also pictures of the property and
Okay.
some pictures of my dogs.
Thank you for your testimony. You'll have an opportunity to come back later this evening.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, we'll take testimony from anyone that's opposed to this application. If we have any in the audience, anyone opposed? Okay, we'll take testimony for those that are in support of the project. Please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and spell your last name. Could we get the cordless mic for this gentleman?
I can get close. I can get very close. Okay. Come here. Sit. Yeah, sit. Sit. Good boy. Oh, sit. Oh, he's nervous. Hi, my name is Howard Charnow. That's Charnaw. And this is my service dog, LG. And as you notice, he was sitting here calm and cool, and that's the kind of dogs that the lady breeds. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had been able to get this dog. So maybe he'll listen. Let's sit. Sit. Nope. But I'm only attesting that the time I've ever been to the facilities, it's always been clean and up to par. So that's all I can say is that if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had the dog. Oh, see? And it's really hard to take the time and the effort to get a service dog. It's the breeding. If it isn't the breeding, you can't stand a chance. But that's all I can say right now. Like I said to the lady, I was very thankful for her to get the dog. Do you have any questions? Oh, I didn't pay
Thank
anything.
you, sir.
She donated the dog to me because my other dog had just passed away,
Okay.
so,
Well, thank you for your testimony, for
All right,
coming
thank
out this
all right,
evening.
thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Mike Tyer, T-Y-E-R. I've known Jennifer probably for maybe, I don't know, 8, 9 years. And every time I've been over to that property, the dogs all look safe, healthy and been fed and water and so forth. Okay, I am a retired billing contractor, so right now I'm in the process of getting all her billing permits together. I mean, not her billing permits, but all engineering, her drawings, and everything else she needs to get submitted to the planning department. I'm about almost 2 weeks out to have it complete. Right now, the only thing that's holding me up is the engineer on these sheds, which I think is a little ridiculous, but life goes on. And one other thing I have to say is that whoever came out and did the last inspection from the animal services lied in many, many places there. So there should be, I think, an investigation on this person, which is a public servant, and which lies about this means that she lies about, or it lies about other things. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
I'm Colleen Ojeda, O-J-E-D-A. I have known Jennifer Arn for over 4.5 years, almost 5 years now. I live real close to her out in Sand Canyon. I go over and help her do paperwork, vaccines, build structures, repair structures, all that. All those dogs on that property are her personal dogs. She does not have them for the purpose of breeding. They are her personal dogs. Yes, she does breed them. She knows every single one of those dogs by name. They all know her. They all have house time. That's why her puppies are born in the house, because that's where, I don't know, as far as I'm concerned, a responsible breeder should have their puppies born in the house and be hands-on with families. That's what makes a good pet, a good dog. As far as the animal control inspections, like Mr. Louie, I'm sorry, this one on the end, brought up the fact that the last several inspections by animal control, everything has been clean and the dogs were healthy and everything else. Well, the most recent one was done by a different animal control officer. And that's the one that's in question. And I know for a fact her dogs have never been infested. An infestation would be a dog that has at least, I would say, 15 to 20 ticks on it. That's an infestation, and that's what she put in her report. I know that that Jennifer's dogs are microchipped. I have seen her do it. I have helped her do it. I do her paperwork. Everything is down. Her vaccinations. She's up to date on her licenses and her rabies vaccinations. Even that was in the animal control report. So she's at least trying, and I think that this last report is just a last-ditch effort to put her out, end her kennel. And being that she's been doing it for over 50 years, that's her life. That is her life. And her dogs all look pretty much like that dog right there. I'm there, like I said, very frequently. She'll tell me, oh, go get so-and-so out of the yard. I'm like, who's that? They all look alike. But she knows every single one by name. Every single one. Those are personal dogs. Those aren't commercial breeding dogs. They're pets. And I think it would be a huge injustice if she had to downsize to only 6 dogs. And she has no problem taking care of them. She can feed all those dogs. I've seen her do it in an hour and a half. I had to go over there one time and do it by myself. It took me 4 hours because I don't know her dogs. She does. So hopefully you'll consider allowing her to have more than 6 dogs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, do you have any questions?
Not at this time. Thank you.
No? Okay.
Next speaker, please. Okay. Could you pull that microphone over to the center of the podium? Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Erin Collins, Collins. And I know Sue through a friend. We went one time, a little less than a year ago, to pick up a puppy. And I was so impressed with her facility. I didn't know what to expect, but there were huge dog runs with shaded trees, and the dogs were allowed to be, you know, in with each other, so they had that dog pack thing going on. They were friendly, they were happy, they were clean. And I went away being so very, very impressed with the facility that she had there. And also in the breeding of these dogs, they're so amiable. And I have a grandnephew with type 1 diabetes. These are the kind of dogs that are needed in society because they go well with the family, but they have these special gifts and intelligence. He has a diabetic alert dog that is a part of the family and such a treasure. And the world needs more of this kind of dog, maybe not other kinds, but I would like to see her able to continue her business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
It doesn't look like it. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Diane Garton, Garton, and I have known Jennifer Susan for more than 25 years. I was there at the debacle that almost ruined her from Acton. You mentioned that. That was not... She had bought a property that a realtor wanted back, and he spread rumors, and it almost destroyed her. It almost... Everybody believed what this man said, so she did move to Kern County. She did not breed dogs for sale at that time. She was strictly hobby and showing. When I saw how good her dogs were, I told her, you have to breed more. And she's never been able to get a job since then. I said, you're going to have to make these dogs self-sustaining, which in dog circles is kind of a, they look down on you. You should never do that. You should be nothing but a breeder and show and do that. The meanest, nastiest people in the world come from the dog show world. She has been the victim of that in some of these areas. But as for her dogs that she breeds, I've been around them for 25 years. And if you know anything about breeding Goldens, like she said, you have to keep them for at least 2 years to find out your top-notch dogs. To demand that she goes down to just 6 dogs, she's not going to be able to keep up with her breeding program. There are way too many dogs out there. We did not have enough time to bring all the people together that are in an uproar about this situation. If you give us time, we can get them. But she is able to handle the dogs, take care of the dogs, and like everybody said, they're clean, they're happy. They look like LG here, who's very worried, you can tell. This is just, I know that there's a big move today to push breeders out of business. She's not actually a business, she is a self-sustaining hobby breeder. She does not have a job like other people do to support that. I'm the one that told her she had to breed them for other people. And it has worked out well. Her dogs are all over the entertainment world. They show up in commercials. They are the best thing a family can have. So to make her go down to that many, just because there's a big push to run people out of business and make them go to the pound to get their puppies, is wrong. If she was breeding something like purse puppies or pit bulls, I'd say take her down. But she's breeding dogs that have ended up in the service of a lot of people. So I'm asking you not to make her take her breeding down to 6 dogs. It will run the breeding. Any questions?
It doesn't appear so at this time, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
And would anyone else like to speak? I'll give you your opportunity in a second. Anyone else like to speak other than the applicant? Okay, then I'll ask the applicant to come back for a closing statement. Again, please state your name for the record.
Susan Jennifer Arn, known as Jennifer Arn, A-R-N.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say that what the people are saying here is correct. And, you know, if I only have 6 dogs, then, you know, I have nothing. My whole life for 50 years is down the tubes. Because what I've developed here and, you know, through my breeding and everything would be totally wasted. And the young dogs I have that I'm getting ready to, you know, see if they're good enough to keep, that brings my count down really far. So I need the chance to do that. But this 4-month and 6-month is weird. You know, it would be more practical for my purposes for, you know, a year to cut the dogs down from whatever, 40 to 50 down to 30 or 20 or 35, and then I'll gradually get it down to like probably 25. But that will give me what I need to continue breeding the good dogs, all the OFA excellent dogs, and, you know, the healthy, beautiful, happy, you know, calm dogs. And it's hard to think everything, there's so much.
Okay. I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
How often is the fecal material picked up and how is it disposed?
It's picked up every day, and it goes into plastic bags and then into dog food bags, and once a week, all the trash is taken to the dump. That's house trash, dog trash, everything.
By yourself or by a commercial hauler?
No, Don that lives there, he picks up the poo and bags it and everything, and then we have a guy that comes in every Friday, and he takes it to the dump.
Okay. Second question is, the reason you wait before you breed is to get their hips OFA'd?
Yeah, their hips, elbows, eyes, and heart. Those are the 4 clearances you need before you should breed.
Okay.
I can do prelims at 1.5 years and get a reasonable answer, but it's better to wait until they're 2 and get a regular OFA, which is not a prelim. And then that's considered permanent.
What do you do with the dogs that don't pass the tests?
Well, like I said, I would sell them, or, you know, if they're sellable, or I would give them away, or I give a lot of dogs to rescue, mainly because the dogs I give to rescue, they sell, and then they use that money to support rescuing dogs that are, you know, mistreated, abused, and they love my dogs. They keep calling and wanting more, but I don't have them, you know, so I do whatever I can. And a friend of mine has given me some dogs lately that, puppies that she was in the middle of moving. She didn't have time to sell them, so she gave them to me, and I would call rescue to come get them, or she said, if there's one I want to keep, I can keep. And, you know, that happens quite a bit. I help her out a lot. We help each other.
Do you have any further comments?
Like I said, there's so much, I'm overwhelmed with all this.
Understood.
Yeah,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
This time, I'm going to close the public portion of this meeting and turn it over to the commissioners for comment and action.
Well, Commissioner Sprague's pointing at me, so I guess I'll begin. You know, I'm noting that in that supplemental report over the last 18 months, the Animal Services Department, I know there's some conflicting information, but it looks like 3 site visits and everything was clean and healthy and safe. And so I would support, and I don't know how you guys feel yet, but I would support allowing 25 dogs at the facility, giving her some more time to reduce the number that she currently has, which I think is around 40. Giving her more than 6 months, I think it would probably take more time to reduce that number. And then maybe bring it back in a year or 2 years and after some more site visits to see how it goes.
Application's for 2 years right now.
It's a 2-year, okay. we'll bring it back and see how it goes from then. Maybe we have to reduce it at that point, or maybe we can up it. I'd like to hear what the other commissioners have to say.
I pushed my button, but it says Commissioner Babcock, so.
Go ahead.
Okay. I've read this pretty clearly and also investigated on the web and read the comment letters, which there were a lot in support. And then there was some nasty background stuff way back in 1990 about her operation in LA County. It's a difficult decision. I think at 6 dogs, it makes it unreasonable to conduct a breeding kennel there that she could support, even though they could be personal dogs. I don't think she could produce enough with breeding to actually pay for the dog food that she has to feed if it was 20 or 25 dogs. So I'm of the mind, like you are, Commissioner Louie, that maybe we should be looking at like 20 dogs and stick with the pattern that the conditions that the staff has printed out for us in the staff report, giving her a two-year conditional use permit, 20 dogs max, and along with those conditions that they've printed for us here to look at, let her move on for a 2-year period and giving her a probationary period of 4 months to reduce from where she's at down to 20 dogs. And a 2-year, I could support that.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. There is one condition in here that doesn't sit well with me, and I compliment her on doing all of the OFA testing. According to staff, one of the conditions is a dog that's 4 months or older is considered an adult. Given the fact that she waits for 2 years to have these dogs tested for their health, I don't know if that condition's even necessary at this point, as long as we put a maximum number of, or we consider dogs 2 years and up as adults instead of 4 months. That would be the only change I'd like to see. As far as the reduction of 48 dogs now down to 20, you suggested in 4 months. I think that's a little unreasonable too. I think she's got a 2-year CUP. I think I'd give her a year to cut down to the 20 or 25, whatever we end up coming up with together here. But in that 1 year time, to reduce her kennel size down to whatever we agree on this evening. And that would allow her not to have to rush and make rash decisions trying to get reducing her kennel size. I support you. It sounds like you've got a good operation. I too have done some research and saw some nasty reports in there about you. I don't know you. I hope that if you did that years ago, that you're not doing it now. I'm willing to give you a couple of years here and reduce your kennel size and show the county that you can stay in compliance and show all the inspections, different agencies that inspect your facility, that you stay in compliance. And if we find out that you're not in compliance, then we can certainly have code enforcement step in at any time, and you could lose your 2-year conditional use permit. And that would also play out to any neighbors that would complain and call the county planning and environmental services, natural resource department. They keep changing the name on me, so hard to keep up with your names here, but so I guess if we could agree on a number of dogs, if this is the direction we're going to go. I've heard 20 and I've heard 25, so.
Commissioner Babcock, can I offer just a few comments here that may help lead in some of this discussion?
Certainly.
The 4-month-old, I completely understand. I believe, and I do not know specifically where it's codified, I believe that's actually codified from a county, that any dog that is 4 months or older is considered an adult dog. So
Okay.
what I would recommend, if your commission is going along those lines, because that is what a consideration is for an adult dog, you want to give her the opportunity to breed and have them longer for 2 years, I believe that it would be more appropriate to keep that provision in about an adult dog is considered 4 months or older, but then authorize more dogs. You know, trying to manage this would be, if you have a dog that's not considered an adult, but then does it count towards the kennel operations, that becomes difficult. So because I believe that's codified in terms of one of our standards, I would rather leave that particular provision in, and if you believe you want to have more flexibility based on knowing that an adult dog could be on site for up to 2 years while she determines, I would rather, or I believe it would be easier to manage her conditions and such that
Okay.
you up the number of dogs as opposed to striking that provision.
Mr. Sprague, would you
Yeah, that's fine.
be okay with 25?
Yeah.
Mr. Louie? Okay.
I'm fine
Then,
with 25, and I like the longer amount of time if Commissioner Sprague's okay.
Yeah,
with it.
that's fine.
Okay.
Commissioner,
Gentlemen, our next would be a motion.
Wait,
Before we make a motion, if we could adjourn for 5 minutes while I speak to staff.
okay.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So I'm concerned.
Commissioners are present.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have one question, just so I can help craft the revised conditions based on your recommendation, as I understand it, which I will then read it to you. What was the length of time that your commission was interested in? Were you interested in, it sounded like you said a year. If you wanted to go through a year, are you obtaining, or are you wanting to go 4 months, then with an opportunity upon written concurrence that through Animal Services, they're obtaining the appropriate permits, and then extend it for an additional 8 months? Is your commission looking more towards, you have 8 months to comply? I need a little bit more specific information so that I can craft the recommendation. Again, the reason it was done originally was to just show an initial compliance and then
Okay.
allow for the opportunity of continue to actually reduce the
My suggestion on a year, and you can word it however you feel necessary, but by 1 year from the approval, which would be tonight if it was approved, she must only have 25 adult dogs on the property. Now, she does that in phases, 4 months and then 8-month extension, or she does it, however you feel comfortable wording it is fine with me, but I just wanted to give her the opportunity to be able to do it the right way.
Okay, so based on what I've heard, if it sounds like your commission, I would recommend the following changes to the conditions of approval that are in your staff report. The first change would be on condition 2. Instead of saying that the project proponent to keep a maximum inventory of 6 adult dogs, I would change 6, and now would now become 25 adult dogs. I would leave the provision that any dog over 4 months of age is considered an adult. Later on, I would change the condition to where it says it is the project proponent to manage business operations in such a manner to ensure that no time there will be more than 25 adult dogs on site. So I would make those 2 changes to condition number 2. And then based on your comments about the length of time, condition number 3, I would change the extension from 6 months to 8 months. What that would do is that the condition would read, no more than 48 adult dogs shall be on site until such time as the project proponent has reduced the total inventory of adult dogs for commercial uses to, I would change this to 25. The project proponent shall reduce the total inventory of adult dogs for commercial use to 25 within 4 months from the date of final approval. The time period to reduce the total number of dogs can be extended for an additional 8 months upon written request and approval from the Kern County Animal Services Department. Such a decision to extend the time period shall be at the discretion of the Director of Kern County Animal Services and shall be based on a good faith effort by the project proponent to obtain all necessary Kern County permits and the overall quality health of the dogs maintained on site. So I would make those two changes to conditions 2 and 3.
That works.
Sounds good?
Okay.
Have a motion?
Further
So with
discussion?
that, what I'll do real quick for your commission, the revised recommendation.
Yeah, if you'd like to read in the motion, and then if I could get somebody to ring in on it, that would be great.
The revised recommendation would be to approve conditional use permit, subject to recommended revised conditions of approval, including those read into the record for conditions 2 and 3, for a temporary 2-year period, and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution.
I have,
Second.
I have a
Motion,
motion.
my
and a second.
mic was off.
Oh.
Motion.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Three ayes, 2 absent, motion carries.
Thank you. Your item has been approved as was read into the record, ma'am. Our next item.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
appeal process, yes.
There is an appeal process, as this project is considered final by your commission unless it is appealed to the Board of Supervisors. And for the benefit of the project proponent, I want to read that. For projects where planning commission action is final, those actions are subject to appeal to the Board of Supervisors by any interested person, and no development proposed by any application may be authorized until after the final date of appeal. An appeal may be filed with the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department, located at 2700 M Street, Suite 100 in Bakersfield, with a filing fee of $540 on forms available at the Planning and Natural Resources Department.
Thank you. Our next item is H, which is adjournment.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned.